Hi, it's Junius. Sorry. It is juice time. This is my favorite kind of juice with Junius. I think that's probably what I'm going to call it from now on. Instead of coffee with Junius, I'm going to call it juice with Junius. There's my cow. Little cow. I'm growing my hair out, as you can see. It's getting long in the back. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about my 20s. Compared to other people, my 20s was very easy. I got help from my dad. My rent was always paid. I always knew that my rent was going to be paid and then I wouldn't be homeless, even though I was constantly afraid about money. I graduated from college when I was 23, which was older than most of my friends. And I still haven't matured. And I went to California. And I had about $7,000 to my name. Money left over from what my parents had saved for me, my grandparents had saved for me for college. I went in-state, so I didn't go into debt, thank God, and I didn't have to work when I was at school. I worked over the summers, but I never worked during school time because my parents wanted me to focus on being a student. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. So, don't you love this background? Isn't that great? These are my boyfriend's paintings, drawings. I've got this cow like my mom used to have. For me, my 20s were really hard. I was always afraid to spend money. I never really knew when I was going to make money, if I was going to be able to get a job, or if I was going to be able to hold it down. I never was able to hold down jobs for more than a couple of months. I don't know if that's because of my mental health problems or just because of who I am as a person. I honestly don't think, in all honesty, I don't think I ever should have worked. I don't think I was cut out to have a job. I know that might sound really spoiled and, all that other stuff, but I truly don't think I was ever meant to work. I'm not good at taking direction. If I'm in a play, of course, like I've said in other videos, taking direction is easy. And of course I listen to the director. But when I'm in a job that I hate, taking direction is really hard. So, I went to California, and my twin sister was out there at the time with her husband, and, well, he wasn't her husband then. And I stayed with my sister with a friend of hers for 2 weeks in Oakland, and then my sister and Thoth, her husband, wanted to go to Oregon, and I was sick of them. I got sick of them after 2 weeks, and I decided to stay in California, and I was like, I didn't know where to live, and my mom helped me. This is one of the only times she ever helped me when I was in my 20s. She called her old school friend, Jamie Stobie, who I'm named after, and asked her. She lived in San Francisco, and she lived in Pacifica. No, not Pacifica. Up on a hill that overlooked the city. And this is just randomly. This is a necklace that I bought my boyfriend. It's a raven skull, and this is my angel ring that I bought a couple necklace. This one is silver and his is black. And I bought this ring. For me, this is an angel and his is a devil, which I think is very appropriate. He wears And I also bought him a crucified skeleton, silver skeleton that he wears all the time. And he wears a lot of rings on his fingers. He doesn't feel comfortable if he doesn't wear his rings. And I can't stand wearing rings, so I'm wearing my ring on my necklace. But I try to wear this all the time. Sorry, that's random. So I moved in with Jamie, and I wound up living with her for about 3 months for free. I had nothing to do. I wasn't working. I tried to find a job, but I didn't have any luck, and I decided to look for schools to go to, like mime schools to go to, physical theater schools. And I found a physical theater school in San Francisco that was having a summer thing soon, like a 3-week summer intensive. And I went there and I met James and Lenny. Leonard Pitt is a brilliant mask performer. He went to Bali and studied mask making and dancing there. He also lived in Paris for 7 years and studied with Decroux, the guy who taught Marcel Marceau, the OG French mime who made mime popular in America. Look up Marcel Marceau's teacher. I can't quite remember what Lenny's but Lenny studied with this guy for 4 years, and then he lived in Paris for 7 years total. He was only going to be there for just a little while, just like me moving to California. And James taught himself, James Donlan. He's a brilliant mime. Lenny is very sweet. We talk every day. He's been very sweet to me. We weren't friends for like a decade. I was kind of intimidated by him. And then I told him the problems that I've been having with my sister, and he's always been a really nice person to confide in about any personal things that are going on. And I call him basically every day, and we talk for maybe just a couple of minutes, and I just update him on my life. He's a real sweetie. And I recently talked to James. I bought his book on mime, which is right here. Oh, crap. Oh, no. Where's the book? Oh. Well, I don't know where the book is. I had the book. It's Musings on Mime by James Donlan. And so I studied there for 3 weeks, and then I decided to go to the full-time program. It was 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, 9 to 12, Monday to Friday. And James would teach an hour and a half, and Lenny would teach an hour and a half. And it was in a studio in downtown San Francisco. And I dropped out after a couple of months because I went broke. And I actually asked James, I told him that I couldn't come to school anymore because I was broke and I couldn't pay for classes. And he was like, that's okay. You can still come. Just pay me whenever you can. And I actually just recently paid him back. It's been since 2011 that I've owed him money, and I finally paid him back, which felt really good. And so I lived there for 5 years. I lived in Oakland for 5 years. I got a place to live in Oakland. It was like a converted warehouse. The floors were made of concrete. This guy named David, who actually died of cancer a few years ago, he went to Flying Actors, which was the physical theater school that I went to. He went there with me. And I asked everybody, because the only people that I knew in San Francisco were the people at Flying Actors. So I asked everybody, I was like, do you have anywhere for me to live? Do you know about any jobs? I was like desperate to stay in California. And David said, I've got a room in my warehouse for $400. And I was like, well, fuck. And I never paid more than $400 for a room in a house for the first 3 years that I was out there. I lived with David for 2 years. And then I lived in a really, really tiny 1-bedroom apartment in Oakland, right next to the MacArthur BART station with this teacher. And I slept all the time, like you do. And then I lived with my friend Jim for 6 months. So, and then I had to go home for 9 months because I was really depressed, and I got a job at Starbucks. I worked there in Franklin for 9 months. It was terrible. I'll tell you about that experience some other time. And then I went back to California. I got a job at a store in Berkeley. I transferred to a store in Berkeley, and I worked at Starbucks there for about a year. And I met my friend AJ, Natalie, Alex, Frank, Joe, Eric Bartz. I still talk to my friend AJ every day. And I quit after a year. I worked as a cater waiter and stuff like that for about a year. And then I got into grad school in southern Mississippi, and I left. I also, my last job in San Francisco was working for the SF Speakeasy, which was an immersive theater show. I was the spotlight operator in the cabaret, which was wonderful. I got to meet this guy named Ron Campbell, who was a clown in Cirque du Soleil in Japan, where he met his very much younger wife, and I got to take classes with him in his house in Emeryville. That was wonderful. He also knew, like, Japanese sword play and karate and all this other stuff, and he was, like, in his 60s or 70s when I met him, and I used to just, like, sit on the stairs next to his bureau and watch him put makeup on, and because I'd get to the speakeasy hours before anybody else showed up because I had to check all the lights. And I just sit there and talk to Ron for like an hour. And I eventually was like, "Are you teaching any classes?" And he was like, "Yeah, I teach classes every Monday at my house." And he was like, "You're more than welcome to come." And it was like, I don't know, it was like $20 to take a 3-hour long class with him. I met a lot of really, really fine, masterful physical theater performers and clowns in the Bay Area. I also met David Magison. I don't know if that's his last name. He was in Barnum and Bailey. I also met Bill Irwin, who I made a video about. I know him. I got his email address because I wrote him a letter. Gave it to the box office staff, and they gave it to him, and I wrote my email address at the bottom, hoping against hope that he would write back to me, and he did. So now I email him once every 6 months just to update him on my life and ask him how he's doing. I just saw him in a play called Eureka Day in New York City this December. I didn't like the play, but it was wonderful to see him. I got to go backstage and see him and say hi. He's not like my friend, he's like an acquaintance. I'd love to take him out to dinner, take him out to have coffee, and just talk to him. Just have a friendly conversation. But anyway, my 20s were hard, but they were actually really magical. I was also in a lot of plays. I was actively involved in the indie theater scene out there. I was in a theater company called Overcast Theater for about 3 or 4 years. It only existed while I was out there. I auditioned for Alejandro's, he was the ID. I auditioned for his very first play because my friend Karina told me about his theater company and said, "You need to audition." Karina and I aren't friends anymore, but Alejandro and I are still friends. We don't talk very much, but we're still friends. I still consider him my one of my best friends. So it was really the hard part about living in San Francisco, living in Oakland, was, first of all, being away from my twin sister in college was really, really, really hard for me. I was very close to her all through my life, and when I decided to go to a different college from her, and she decided to go out of state and study opera, and I decided to go out of state and study theater, and I really missed her, and I felt really isolated and really, really alone and really suicidally depressed all the time because I missed her, and she was like my only friend for my entire life, and then she was gone. And then in California, it was really hard to find places to live that were affordable. Every place that I lived was very cold. There was no central heating. So at one place that I lived in southern Berkeley or North Oakland, I lived with this horrible lady. She was an SJW. She was a horrible, hypocritical lady. Huge, just like enormous. And she was a terrible person. And it would be so cold at night, and I'd get a little electric heater and plug it in, and the entire building's electricity would go out. That's how bad it was. So I would have to like bundle up. I'd have to wear double pairs of socks, gloves, a hat, a scarf, a jacket, and I'd have to wear them all inside my house because it was just so fucking cold. And I don't miss being that cold. And when it was hot, which was very rare in California, in the Bay Area, you just had to deal with it. But it was mostly the cold. It was mostly how cold it would get at night. It was also really hard to find a job and keep it. I would get fired from jobs all the time because I made really stupid mistakes. Like one job, I put my food in the oven and it like spilled into the grates of the electricity, and my boss was like, "Why did you do that? We didn't tell you that you could heat up food." And I was like, "I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking." So I'd make really dumb, I'm not stupid, I'm really smart, but I just would make really dumb mistakes at work. And the managers would always be, "We're not firing you because you're a bad person, we're firing you because you've just made a lot of dumb mistakes." And we really the managers would always be like, "We really like you, but it's just not working out." So it was really hard to keep a job. I'd go for months without working, and I wouldn't have anything to do, and I would often go to coffee shops, and I'd sleep all day, go to coffee shops, and I'd call my dad, and I said, "Dad, is it okay if I spend $5 on a coffee?" And I was like, "I think it is, because it's better than me staying at home all day." And he was like, "Yeah, I agree with you." Nowadays I can go out and get whatever I want to, and I don't have to call anybody or ask anybody for money, which is wonderful, and I never thought that would be possible. But I really only remember the good parts of my 20s. I don't really remember the bad parts. But it was challenging. Living in a big city is really hard. It's inconvenient. It's, your car gets towed, your car gets broken into. It's freezing in your apartment. It's too expensive. Everything is really expensive. Transportation is expensive. Owning a car, gas is ridiculous. Getting to the city is really expensive. You have to pay a toll every time you go into the city. Meeting people who are sane is really hard. But I started a theater company. I did a lot of shows. And I lived there for 5 years, and I'm really happy that I did that. And I think every young person in their 20s when they graduate from college should move to a big city. I was lucky because I had extra help from my dad, and if he hadn't helped me, I don't know what I would have done. I probably would have gone home, because I wasn't going to work like 12 hours a day, every day of the week. Even working 8 hours a day was hell for me. So I probably would have moved home. But every 6 months I'd call my dad and I'd say, "Dad, I think I need to come home." And he'd be like, "No, Jamie, I think you should stay. I think it's healthy for you to be away from me and take care of yourself and learn how to be an adult." And I would always go, "Okay." And he'd say, "You can come home whenever you want to, but I think it's best if you stay out in California." And he would always go, "I'm willing to help you for as long as it takes." And I would always be afraid that he would cut me off. And if he did, I would just had to move home. After a while, moving home wasn't an option anymore. My dad got sick of me, and my mom died, and we sold the house, so there's really no home to go home to anymore except for my own home. But my life changed completely. I came into money after my mom died 4 years ago, and I don't have the kind of problems that most other people have anymore. I don't have to work. I don't have to worry about bills. I don't have to have a job. And I'm very blessed. I realize that, and I'm very grateful for everything that I have, because I didn't have what I have now 5 years ago. I was completely broke. I was miserable. I was lonely. I was depressed. I was suicidal. And I'm not any of those things anymore. So this video was going to be about how hard my 20s were, but I guess the takeaway from this video is, if you're in your early 20s and you've just graduated from college, for one thing, go to college in-state. And then move out of state, move to a big city. If you've always wanted to move to a big city, move to a big city and live there for a couple of years. And when you move to a smaller town, or you move to a town where it's not as difficult, it's not as expensive, you will appreciate what you have. I appreciate the fact that I have this little apartment all to myself. I don't have any roommates to deal with. I can stay up all night and sit on my couch and there's nobody to bother me. I can sleep as much as I want to and no one will wake me up in the morning because they're making noise because they have to go to work. I don't have to deal with annoying roommates anymore. I have my car. I drive everywhere and I can go on a trip whenever I want to. But I don't have any friends. I don't have any friends in Nashville except for my voice teacher, Jordan. And when I was in California, broke and struggling, I had a lot of friends and I was doing a lot of theater and I was very creative, but I had no money. So, do I want to have the life that I had before? Not necessarily. But I don't necessarily want to do theater anymore. So, doing theater is how I make friends. That's partially why I don't have any friends. I have a lot of friends in different states, so I talk to them all online. But I don't have friends in Nashville. And I've lived here for 20 years on and off. But I've never been able to make friends in Nashville, except for my friend Jordan, my voice teacher. But I would say the takeaway from all of this is, if you're young, if you're in your 20s, and you've just graduated from college, go to a big city. Go to a city that you've always wanted to go to. You don't necessarily have to know anybody. Just go to a big city and pursue what you want to pursue. If you want to do acting, singing, dancing, writing, drawing, filmmaking, whatever. If you want to be an artist, move to a big city and experience what it's like to live in a big city. And then when you move to a smaller town like I live in Nashville now, you will really appreciate all that you have. Because if you just live in a small town your whole life, you're never going to appreciate all the blessings of living in a small town. Unless you live in a big city. If you can do it, if you have help, if you don't have help, do it anyway. Just try. Just give it a try. If you've always wanted to live in a big city and you've just graduated in college, I recommend doing it. You won't regret it. Love you all.